Welcome to the Split the Line podcast, the show where we are guaranteed to offend you. On this episode, we are going to tackle racism. On this episode, listen to me, your host, JL, give my 2 cents on everything from police brutality to Black Lives Matter to media portrayal of racism. Just to give you a little bit of an intro, racism is actually the moronic idea that because of the color of skin you were born with, it somehow makes you superior to someone else. While racism has been around, really for forever, the modern focus is typically upon slavery and the Holocaust, but they use it for discrimination towards other people. So let me first start off with being politically correct causes just as many issues. It's also incorrect. The more we try to be politically correct, the further we divide ourselves. We put ourselves into multiple subclasses: hetero, cis, gay, lesbian, trans, multiple, black, white, Native American, Indian. It doesn't matter. We're all people. We're all humans. Trying to divide yourselves into all these other subclasses, and that's what they want. They want us to be divided. They want us to have hate towards one another in order to keep the focus off of what they're doing. We have the rights of freedom of speech, but don't be surprised if you get put on blast if you say something that is not for the status quo. People like to argue that freedom of speech doesn't exist because you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. But what these people need to understand is that the speech itself is fine. It's the panic that the words create afterwards that causes the issue. A false report of fire is akin to falsifying charges on somebody. If you want to speak out on a subject, expect to get someone upset enough to argue with you or even call you names. Just understand that. That's very a big thing. I want to just touch on something that just happened. This whole Greta thing, the 16-year-old who was whining in front of the UN. Yeah. If you are old enough to decide that you care enough about an issue to start talking out on it and get into the media and be in the public's, have the public's attention, you're going to get backlash. The same people that are very upset about everybody that's making fun of the 16-year-old are the same people that pushed mini AOC off of Twitter with death threats. Just think about that for a minute. You had those people giving death threats to a child, but now you're mad because we're making fun of a 16-year-old who got on camera and whined. That literally, it doesn't make any sense. Anyway, back to what we were talking about before. Hate crimes should be abolished. I'm not talking about committing hate crimes because anytime that there's a violent action, it's based off of some type of malice towards another person. I shouldn't say always, given there are people that are just psychopaths and sociopaths that do it just for the thrill or because they have some psychological issue. That being said, when people that are without those types of issues commit a crime to another person, there is some sort of malice that is involved. So I would argue that all assault is based off of some type of hate, at least for the majority of us that don't have severe mental issues. We give the power to these symbols. There's no reason to have hate crime as an additional charge. And this, once again, remember, this is coming from a minority. Saying that something is a hate crime on top of a violent assault charge, all it does is it's giving the media this ability to drive this racism narrative and drive it home further. For instance, one of the biggest pet peeves that I have with journalists today is that they decide that when they're going to run a story about a cop killing someone, they say, oh, white officer kills unarmed black man. I'm like, it doesn't matter what the color of the people are. It matters that a cop killed a person that was unarmed and had not fired at them. That would make that manslaughter at the very least. And that's where these issues come in for Black Lives Matter and everything, is that you cops need to stop killing people. It's as simple as that. Remember, every time you do that, you are violating the 6th and 7th Amendment of the Constitution, which states, by the way, that everybody's got a right to a speedy trial and that you have a right to a jury of peers, and that there shouldn't be excessive. You skip out on all those rights that we have in the court system when these cops decide to play judge, jury, and executioner. Let's talk about Black Lives Matter. All lives matter. And let me just also preface this with, there is no such thing as a blue life. I don't care if you support police. It's a job. All lives matter, sure. The issue is that when they were originally going with the whole Black Lives Matter, it was because minorities are more likely in the police encounters that occur to be roughed up. That's not saying, do not get me wrong, I am not saying that it doesn't occur to Caucasians as well, or whatever they want. It happens to everyone, is my point. And the point is, what really needs to come down to it is that screw Black Lives Matter, screw all lives matter. Let's just start making police accountable for what they do. Why spend all the money on these non-lethals if you're not going to use them? Perhaps the police need more training in dealing with the mentally handicapped. One of the biggest issues, what drove me into my distrust of the police, had nothing to do with a skin color issue. It was the Kelly Thomas case. If you don't know what this is, you need to look this up. And this is where a homeless schizophrenic was beaten to death by multiple officers over the course of, I think it was 15 to 30 minutes. I could be wrong. I'll have to review the video. It's horrifying to watch. And then very little was done to these officers. Kelly Thomas was a homeless man diagnosed with schizophrenia who lived on the streets of Fullerton, California. He was beaten to death by 6 members of the Fullerton Police Department on July 5th of 2011. He was taken to St. Jude Medical Center and transferred to UC Irvine Medical Center. He arrived in a coma and was not expected to recover. He died on July 10th. The bones in his face were broken. He choked on his own blood. He died. His parents removed him from life support. But Officer Manuel Ramos was charged with 1 count of second-degree murder and 1 count of involuntary manslaughter. Corporal Jay Cicinelli and Officer Joseph Wolf were each charged with 1 count of felony involuntary manslaughter and 1 count of excessive force. All 3 pleaded not guilty. After you watch this video, please explain to me how they pleaded not guilty. A judge did decline to dismiss the charges against the officers in 2013. However, on January 13th, 2014, Ramos and Cicinelli were found not guilty of all charges. And on January 17th of 2014, the charges against Wolf were dropped. So out of 6 officers that beat this man to death, only 3 were even charged, and none of them faced any justice. At all. At all. Think about that for a little bit. Let's also consider the fact that this is why the Black Lives Matter crowd came about. We had how many of these mass shooters that came about, particularly the ones that had less melanin in their system, they get arrested. However, Michael Brown, criminal that he was unarmed. He reached for a gun, sure. He had beaten somebody, but he didn't kill a bunch of people. And he was shot down. Eric Garner was choked to death for selling loose cigarettes. But these mass shooters, we have absolutely no problem whatsoever arresting them and putting them behind bars. But why is it that the people that are unarmed, these cops decide to go off on and kill? And now, sorry, Republicans, but all of these people that are saying, oh, well, the police won't take our guns, da 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 da. I'm like, the police seem to enjoy beating unarmed people all the time. Look at, and they did situations like Waco, Texas. Don't trust in the police. That's why we need our AR-15s. That's why we need the Second Amendment. Don't trust in the police. I trust in Smith and Wesson. And I also will defend my constitutional rights from police or whomever because I don't trust the courts. Look at this Kelly Thomas case. I do not trust SCOTUS. I don't trust any court in this country that allows things like this to go on and then tries to back the blue. I'm sorry, but until the blue starts policing themselves, I don't trust them. I don't want them in my vicinity. I will handle it myself. I would much rather handle it myself. I understand that there may be some cops that listen to this, and I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but here's a good idea. Before you decide to go and arrest people for nonviolent crimes and all that other stuff, how about you start policing your own brethren? Call them out on their BS. How many of you have beaten the crap out of the 6 officers there in Fullerton for what they've done? Or were you just happy that your brothers in blue beat the charges? Think about that. And it doesn't help that more citizens have been killed by police since 2001 than U.S. soldiers died in the war zones in the same time frame. We are supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. That is how it works. You must prove guilty in a court of law. Police, you are not the judge, jury, and executioner. That being said, Black Lives Matter, folks, if you're going to riot, why are you attacking convenience stores? Go to the police stations, go to the courthouses. That's where they committed these atrocities. Stop flipping cars in mom and pop stores. Go flip police cars. Quit acting like animals if you don't want to be treated like animals. And that goes for both sides. I'm not advocating for violence against police officers. Not at all. That being said, treat others how you want to be treated for both sides. If you want respect, officers, it's earned, not given. You putting on the uniform doesn't give you that respect. You're not entitled to it. You show us respect and we show it back. That's how it works. The media is not helping. We talked on this a little bit earlier. The media is not helping. Leave opinion for the podcasters and the internet bloggers and everything else. TV should be opinion free when it comes to media and news. You should be providing the direct facts of simply just what happened. Unless you know that it was racially based, the color doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So the people to blame for these things is it comes with the media, the government, the police themselves. And it's got a historical precedent. This has been something that has been occurring since the days of segregation because of the Iran-Contra scandal. Understand what was going on back then. And this was, again, Republican era. This was Bush Sr. and Reagan with Iran-Contra that were pushing drugs via black ops into Iran-Contra scandal. This is all Freedom of Information Act at this point. And they're pushing drugs into minority neighborhoods. This is also around the same time that they were purposely trying to get minorities sick in these neighborhoods, handing out faulty flu vaccines, things like that. So at that rate, everybody likes to bring up the fact that blacks make up 13% of the population and are responsible for over 50% of the violent crime and murder. However, after centuries of being treated like animals, are we surprised really that in the last 50, 60 years, this type of thing has been occurring? People are mad. They now are learning the history. They know what's been done to their family members back in the day. So I don't advocate for reparations. I'm sorry, that's stupid. Don't advocate for reparations. That being said, a little empathy on all sides, because there are no slave owners today. If we want to hate on anybody, we should hate on the people that were pro-segregation, which, by the way, was a lot of Democrats. It was a lot of Republicans, too. Because remember, the only time that they change their mind is for politics. It's for more money. Let's also remember that, the recidivism rate is a big issue with these populations, and taking parents away from their children, and then we put these felony charges on them in a justice system that is literally meant to keep people to fail. And that doesn't matter on what your skin color is. You get a felony charge, they take away your rights, and you must report it to all these businesses. I'm sorry, if they're okay to let back out into society, then these people should get their rights back. Otherwise, keep them in locked up until they're good. Don't let them back out and then restrict them of all these rights that they need in order to not go back into the system. If you've got a felony drug dealer who gets out and now can't get a decent job, well, what do you think that they're going to do to make money to provide for their family or themselves? They're not going to just go broke or start working at McDonald's for nothing. The money is way better. So you need to let them have the opportunity to make better money. Am I saying give free college? No. But I'm saying, how about you have it like maybe a year that they have to report it after their first offense for something that was nonviolent, at least for that. Nonviolent stuff, we move it up for a little bit, or there are other options. I would love to hear some other people's opinions on some of these options. I've got my own personal preference, and I will talk about that on a later date. I'm actually building up something I want to bring forward to people and see what they think as an alternative. But we're not going to go into that on this episode. This one's already longer than most of the ones that I've done. On my final note, as my closing, just remember, folks, the First Amendment is great. But once again, words have much more power than physical objects. You remember the words someone says to you far more than you can remember their laugh or, what they did at some point. Teach others, leave the bigotry where it belongs. Back in the history, in the past. On our next episode, we are going to tackle the upcoming elections, the problems with both sides, and my personal opinions on what I would like to see out of the candidates. I would love to hear some of what you guys want to hear from the candidates as well. Leave those in the comments, and I'll see if I can add some stuff in. Once again, thank you guys for listening, and see you next time.